human cultural liaison Marcus Reed, stood in the grand reception hall of the Ethran Royal Palace, maintaining the careful invisibility that diplomatic protocol demanded. He was present as part of Earth's delegation to the annual Concordance Assembly, a gathering where dozens of species conducted formal diplomatic exchanges and renewed alliance agreements. Marcus's role was purely observational. He was there to document cultural practices, take notes on diplomatic protocols, and generally stay out of the way while more senior diplomats conducted actual negotiations. The Ethran were a hierarchical species with elaborate court ceremonies and strict rules governing interaction with royalty. Queen Solara sat upon her throne with absolute authority, flanked by advisors and guards in ceremonial armor. The court was arranged in precise order of rank and status, with the most important nobles closest to the throne and lesser dignitaries positioned at increasing distances. Marcus stood near the back with other junior diplomatic staff, carefully avoiding any action that might draw attention or violate protocol. The ceremony proceeded with choreographed precision, various delegations approaching the throne to present formal greetings, exchange symbolic gifts, and reaffirm alliance commitments. Then, without warning, everything changed. A young Ethran girl, perhaps 8 years old in human terms, emerged from the royal family's private seating area. She wore elaborate formal robes marking her as Princess Vela, the queen's daughter and heir to the throne. Protocol dictated that the princess should remain seated with other royal family members unless specifically called forward for ceremonial participation. Instead, Princess Vela's eyes scanned the assembled crowd with focused intensity, clearly searching for something or someone. When her gaze found Marcus standing at the back of the hall, her entire demeanor transformed. She gasped audibly, loud enough to carry in the suddenly quiet hall. Then, before anyone could react, she ran, not walked with royal dignity, not waited for guards to clear a path. She simply ran, her formal robes trailing behind her, heading directly toward Marcus with single-minded determination. The palace guards moved to intercept, but they were too surprised by the breach of protocol to react quickly enough. Nobles stepped back in shock, creating a path through the crowd as the princess ran toward the human standing at the back of the hall. Marcus froze, completely uncertain what protocol demanded when a royal child was running toward you during a formal ceremony. His diplomatic training had covered many scenarios, but what to do when the heir to the throne abandons formal ceremony to run at you had not been among them. Before Marcus could decide on appropriate response, Princess Vela reached him and threw her arms around him in a tight embrace, pressing her face against his chest with the unself-conscious affection of a child who'd found someone they trusted completely. The entire throne hall went silent, the kind of profound, shocked silence that suggested everyone present understood they were witnessing something significant and potentially scandalous. Marcus stood very still, his arms slightly raised because he didn't know if touching the princess would violate some critical protocol, while Vela clung to him with grip that suggested she had no intention of letting go. Queen Solara rose from her throne, her expression carrying shock that broke through her usually perfect royal composure. Guards tensed, hands moving toward weapons not to threaten, but to be ready for whatever crisis was unfolding. Vela, the queen's voice carried across the silent hall with authority that could have frozen stone. Release the human immediately and return to your position. But Vela didn't let go. She looked up at Marcus with eyes shining with tears and spoke loudly enough for nearby nobles to hear. You came back. I knew you would. I knew you wouldn't forget me. Marcus felt his stomach drop as memory surfaced, fragmented and vague, because it had seemed so minor at the time, but clearly significant in ways he hadn't understood. 6 months earlier, during Marcus's first diplomatic posting to Ethran space, he'd been exploring the palace gardens during a break in meetings. The gardens were technically open to diplomatic staff, though most avoided them because navigating Ethrin social protocols outdoors seemed more trouble than it was worth. Marcus had been walking alone when he heard crying, quiet, suppressed, but unmistakably distressed. He'd followed the sound to find a young Ethrin girl hiding behind an ornamental fountain, clearly upset and trying not to be noticed. She'd been wearing simple clothing rather than anything marking her as nobility, just a frightened child alone and crying. Marcus had approached carefully, knelt to her level, and asked in his limited Ethrin if she was okay and if she needed help. The girl had been initially frightened of him. Humans were rare in Ethrin space, and Marcus could understand that a strange alien approaching might be scary. But he'd stayed patient, speaking softly, and eventually the girl had explained through tears that she'd had a fight with her mother and run away, but now she was lost and couldn't find her way back and was scared. Marcus had stayed with her, talking quietly about anything he could think of that might be calming, describing Earth's gardens, telling her about his own niece back home, sharing some dried fruit he'd brought as a snack. He'd kept her company until she felt ready to try finding her way back, then helped her navigate the garden paths until they found the royal wing of the palace. When guards had spotted them approaching, they'd reacted with visible panic and rushed forward to take the girl. Marcus had assumed he'd accidentally brought a noble's child into restricted area and braced for diplomatic reprimand. Instead, the guards had thanked him profusely, though there was something odd about their relief that Marcus hadn't fully understood. The girl had hugged him tightly before the guards escorted her away, but Marcus had never learned her name or why finding her had caused such evident relief among the palace staff. He'd reported the incident to his supervisor, been assured it was handled appropriately, and assumed that was the end of it. Clearly, he'd been wrong. Back in the present, Queen Solara descended from her throne and approached Marcus and Vela with measured steps that carried both authority and barely controlled emotion. "Vela, you will explain this behavior immediately," the Queen said, her voice tight with the kind of controlled anger that suggested deep concern beneath the surface. Vela finally released Marcus but didn't step away from him. She turned to face her mother, her voice carrying certainty despite her youth. "This is the kind human from the gardens, Mother. The one I told you about. The one who found me when I ran away and was lost. The one who stayed with me and made me feel safe and helped me find my way home." She looked back at Marcus with expression of absolute trust. "He didn't know I was princess. He just helped me because I was scared and alone. He shared his food with me and told me stories and stayed until he knew I would be safe." Queen Solara's expression shifted through several emotions as understanding dawned. She looked at Marcus with new assessment. "You are the human my daughter described, the one who found her during her episode 6 months ago." "I helped a child who seemed lost and frightened, Your Majesty," Marcus confirmed, choosing honesty over deflection. "I didn't know she was your daughter. She was just someone who needed help. And that ignorance is precisely why this matters," Queen Solara said, her voice carrying weight that silenced the murmuring crowd. "Among the Ethrin, physical contact with royalty is forbidden without explicit permission. Even family members observe careful protocols around touch. My daughter has never initiated unsolicited physical contact with anyone outside our immediate family." She looked at Vela, who was still standing close to Marcus, then back at Marcus. "What you just witnessed is my daughter demonstrating what we call Kethai's instinctive recognition of a true protector. It cannot be commanded, cannot be taught, cannot be faked. It is a child's unfiltered assessment of who can be trusted absolutely, who represents safety without condition." The Queen's voice grew quieter but more intense. "By running to you, by embracing you publicly despite all protocol and training, my daughter has declared you worthy of trust that I, as her mother, have struggled to earn. She has chosen you as guardian friend, and by Ethrin law and custom, that choice cannot be dismissed or overruled." She paused, clearly processing the implications. "You saved my daughter when she was lost and vulnerable. You did so without knowing who she was, without expecting reward, without calculating advantage. That is why her instinct recognizes you as safe, because your protection came from character, not ambition. Queen Solara extended her hand in formal gesture that sent ripples of shock through the assembled nobles. A queen offering recognition to a human of no particular rank. Marcus Reed of Earth, by my daughter's choice and the laws that govern the Kethai's bond, I declare you guardian friend to the royal house. You have earned trust that cannot be given through diplomacy or purchased with alliance. You have it because you helped a frightened child without knowing that helping her would matter. Over the following days, Marcus navigated his sudden elevation from junior diplomat to recognized guardian friend with considerable discomfort. Nobles who had barely noticed him now treated him with respect bordering on deference. Guards who had ignored him now nodded acknowledgement when he passed. And Vela made it very clear that as far as she was concerned, Marcus was now a permanent fixture in her life. She sought him out during court functions, asked him to attend family meals, and told anyone who would listen about the human who stayed, when she was lost and scared. When Marcus's diplomatic posting concluded and he prepared to leave Ethran space, Queen Solara requested a private audience. "You have changed many things, Marcus Reed," the Queen told him. "Not just for my daughter, but for how my court views humans generally. Before, you were seen as diplomatically useful but not particularly significant. Now, because one of you earned my daughter's absolute trust through simple kindness, you are recognized as people of character worth respecting." She paused. "I should also tell you something I have not shared publicly. The day you found Vela in the gardens, she was not merely lost. She had run away after an argument with me about royal responsibilities and protocols. She was found by you instead of the guards I had searching for her." The Queen's expression carried something like shame. Those guards had been searching for hours, but they were looking for a princess, checking official areas, following protocol. You found her because you were looking for a frightened child, not royalty. You succeeded where trained guards failed because you saw her as someone who needed help rather than a political problem to be solved. She extended her hand again. "You may leave Ethran space, but you do not leave our memory. My daughter has declared you guardian friend, and that bond endures regardless of distance. You will always have a place here, Marcus Reed, because you earned it through the simple act of being kind to someone who needed kindness, and that